Andy Peloquin, author of dark fantasy, and I am getting ready to launch or just launching the third book in the Last Bucelarii series titled Gateway to the Past.
What have you learned from writing books 1 and 2 that have helped you and that you've applied to writing the third book?
I've learned that really it's a pattern. Like there's I know that it's been broken down into the 10 steps of telling a good story, the 3-act structure, but I see it as more of a circle. At the beginning of the book, you open the circle with the introduction of a question or a problem or a theme, and by the end of the book, you need to close that circle. At the same time, considering it's the third book in a 6-book series, there's got to be the threads that keep it going. So it's all about closing that circle, that main story arc, while still leaving enough for people to be interested in what comes next.
Something you had to go back to within your previous writings or notes while you were writing this third one that kind of slipped your mind, or you wanted to make sure you had right?
Well, actually, an interesting thing is in the fourth book, he finds out that the gemstone in his dagger is activated by the sound of a scream, a specific scream that you make when you're terrified. And I did research on this, that the timbre of the scream is deeper, it's harsher, more ragged than the sort of scream when you're afraid or happy. So I actually had to go back to the first book, make sure that all of the people, like if he kills someone and they don't scream, I had to edit that. And in the second book and the third book. So I did have to go and retcon it a little bit, but there wasn't any significant changes, thankfully.
Are you conscious about how much to divulge or hold back, knowing where you are within your timeline?
It's sort of like as I write the story, I have a general idea of where it's going, but I don't always figure out the plot twists or the lead-ins to the next book. I will literally add in my outline, add plot twist here, and just sort of let my brain come up with it as I reach that point. And so I know how much I want to reveal more or less in the story, but then some things slip out and some things feel like, oh, I don't want to reveal this just yet. So it sort of changes as I write.
Nice. What is your process in starting a book that you know where it's going, but that you have to continue a story?
Well, my process is actually much less linear. Let's say I kind of jump back and forth. Like, for example, let's say I'm publishing book 3 right now, but while I was working on the final draft of book 3, I had already written the first draft of book 4, and I hadn't even published book 2 yet. So book 2 came out in August. During the time that I was publishing it, I was finishing up book 3, and I already had written book 4. So each book sort of like I'm always in the process of writing 2 or 3 books. Maybe one of them is my current work in progress that I'm focused on. But then I've got one book with the beta readers and then another book about to be published. So I'm always sort of in the groove of what's going on.
Where are we when this book begins in the story?
Well, the first chapter is actually sort of a flash forward. I knew I wanted to start it with this dramatic scene in the middle of a fire and chaos of bandits raiding the caravan. People are dying. The hunter actually starts trapped beneath a wagon with iron arrows embedded in him. And because he's poisoned by iron, he's basically dying. And so it picks up and goes right from there. And then once that chapter is done, it goes back about a month to him in this podunk town in the middle of nowhere, and that's where it goes.
Nice. Are there any new characters you introduce in this one?
Yeah. At the end of the second book, Lament of the Fallen, we're introduced to a child named Halen. He has a mental disorder called Williams syndrome, where he is extremely naive and innocent.
Wow.
To the point where he doesn't understand that he's physically in danger from the people around him. So considering that the main character is an assassin, it's just this absolute night and day contrast between the two characters.
How many moments would you say in the current book that you hesitated or were drawn by emotion or you had to walk away from and take a moment?
Not that many. I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing. I actually lean into those feelings when I feel that that emotion, I try to tap into that and infuse it into the book, because as soon as I finish the chapter, I stand up and I go pick my kids up from their class, or I cook dinner or whatever. So it's much easier to snap out of it. So I like to. It's very rare that I get those things where it's just like overwhelming, but I really like to let that, to feel it, because it does come through in the writing.
Without giving any spoilers, was there something that really surprised you when you wrote it in book three?
Actually, what happens in the second to the last chapter, I just kind of figured it out when I was the chapter writing the chapter before it. I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? How do I continue the story? And then I wrote this scene without knowing how to make it work. And then after I finished writing it, I was like, okay, so how am I going to make this work? And book four answers a lot of the questions that I had after writing that scene.
Tell us one thing in particular to pay attention to in reading the first two books that'll help them for the third book. What's something that maybe a subtext that you've created that maybe people haven't gotten yet, or that you're interested to see how people will relate it to the third book?
Well, I'm actually really interested to see how people perceive the various disorders that I've included. For example, the hunter has pretty classic schizoaffective disorder, which is he has these auditory hallucinations which manifest as the voice in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they're there for a very real reason, which will all make sense by book six, or in book six. But it's a very classic disorder. Then he meets people who have this Williams syndrome disorder, or the crazy homeless guy from book two sort of has a mix of paranoid schizophrenia with bipolar disorder. And then in book four, we meet a sociopath and a psychopath, and the hunter plays them off of each other, and they play him off of each other. Sort of this weird uh, disorder triangle that really showcases the differences between these two disorders. So it would be interesting to see if people understand the reference and what they think about it.
Did any review or beta read change something in book three that you didn't have originally planned?
Oh, absolutely. I had the story, about halfway through the book, the bandits capture the boy and they say, well, if you want him back, if you want him to live, you have to go and kill this guy because you're an assassin. And so I had the hunter say, fine, I'll go do it, and he goes and does it. But one of the readers was like, why would he do that? He would just walk out of camp, wait till nightfall, sneak back in, kill everybody, take the boy away. So I had to add this whole scene where the bandit sends about 20 men with the hunter to escort him and make sure he actually goes and does it. And then one of the bandits actually goes into the city and, makes sure that he kills the king and all that. So it did help to improve the story. It added a ton of tension at the end, because he has to basically race back to the camp to before the deadline. The time crunch is always a great way to add tension. And so that whole scene, that addition, made it a whole lot more interesting.
What do you think will be the hardest part for you when you finally walk away from this series?
I think the hardest part is just going to be tying it up to my satisfaction. The Last Bucelarii series is 6 books, so it's this big. I wanted to write a small tale focused on this character, but it ended up being a much grander scale than I intended. All still around the character, but his part in the world or in the story is much bigger than I intended. And so just tying up all those loose ends satisfactorily to make sure that I actually like the way it's written. Because, when you've been building up a plot twist for 6 books, you really want that plot twist to hit hard instead of it just being, oh, this is what it is. When you want people's jaws to drop. And if you don't, it's like it feels unsatisfactory.
Cite one specific example of how this series has made you a better writer.
This is really the first book that I consider a book of mine. I self-published a novel at the beginning of my career just to sort of have something out there to start getting my name out there. But Blade of the Destroyer, the first book in the series, was really the book that started me off. So as I've been writing the series, I've seen such drastic improvement in my writing style, in my structure, flow, pacing, pretty much everything. So I'm really excited to see where I end up at book 6 next year sometime, because that's going to be a 3-4 year journey that's going to be so rewarding to see come to a conclusion. have a Facebook book launch party going on from March 31st to April 2nd, 3 days jam-packed with author takeovers and music, games, fun, competitions. I am running a competition for 2 signed paperbacks leading up to March 31st for people who invite guests. And then on that weekend, I'll run a competition for more signed paperbacks and ebooks and all kinds of awesome stuff. You can find that on Facebook under Gateway to the Past Book Launch Event. And or you can find it through my Facebook page, Andy Peloquin, or Twitter, Andy Peloquin, my website. Everything is under Andy Peloquin.
Thank you so much for doing this, my friend. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to see the third book coming out, and best of luck to you. And come back and join us for book 4.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
How do you construct a good villain for a good foil? Is it per book? Is it you have one main one that you maybe haven't even revealed yet? How are you approaching the villain aspect of your series?
Actually, that's another element that I had to go back and fix. In book 1, you're introduced to the demons as a concept, that they're the villains. So you know that they're sort of the overall arching enemies. And then there's the god, who is inhabiting the beggar god, a sliver of his consciousness, and he's trying to destroy the world, essentially. And so I knew he was the main big bad ultimately, but then I also had to give him a much more mundane threat. So as I sat down to write book 3, I realized, okay, I need to start bringing in the elements of this villain. So book 1 was already published, couldn't do anything about it. Book 2, I added about 2 lines in the whole series, in the whole book, that hint at a bigger villain. Book 3, it actually brings up the same name again, and it talks about this villain who only shows up in book 4, and he's sort of the ultimate big bad. You find out he's like the puppet master behind everything that happened in book 1, 2, and 3, and his actions lead through book 4, 5, and 6.
Nice. Hey, thanks a lot for watching our latest episode of our show. I hope you're enjoying what you're watching, and if you are, it would be really great if you could please like the video, share it, comment. It really helps us out. It gets us seen. It gets all these indie artists seen, and it's really an important thing for the YouTube community. So please, definitely like, share, comment the video that you just watched and any video that we produce. We always welcome feedback, and we always welcome the community to share what we're doing. It's really awesome that you guys are a part of this and helping us out. Also, please, if you see something you like or you think that's interesting, or you listen to an interview and you want to learn more about that person, go to our website. Our website link is going to be right here on this video. So check it out and go and patronize these great indie artists. Go buy their stuff. We have all the links to everything you could buy from them on our website. You can also go to their website and sign up for their newsletters, sign up for their blogs, and help get the word out about all of them. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.